a case that has already led to mass resignations from career DOJ prosecutors. Let's start the show with Congressman Troy Carter, Democrat of Louisiana and first vice chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. Congressman, let's start with the breaking news. We just heard from the president leaving the Daytona 500 in Florida. Take a listen to his response to a question about rising egg prices.
Reached an all-time high. What's your administration? Egg prices have reached an all-time high.
It was a long, before I ever got here, it was at an all-time. This didn't, remember, I've been here for 3 weeks. And when you saw the inflation numbers, I've been here for 3 weeks. I have had nothing to do with inflation. This was caused by Biden. I had 4 years of virtually no inflation. So I'm just taking over. But I'll tell you what, this country has made more progress in the last 3 weeks than it's made in the last 4 years.
This country's made more progress in the last 3 weeks, he's saying, than they have in 4 years. Of course, that's his assessment. What's your reaction, Congressman?
However, now it appears that our president has a sense of selective memory. This is the president who said on day one he was going to bring the price of eggs down. On day one, the price of groceries would go down. On day one, his presidency would end the war in Ukraine. At some point, the American people have to realize they've been duped. They've been boonswoggled. This president is a salesman of sorts, but not a salesman of goods, a salesman of false dreams and suggesting to people that he has a magic wand. And then when it's time to perform, he blames it on the last person. I'll remind you that our economy was strong both times he took over the presidency, and within a very short period, he took it to the bottom. And he's on his way doing it again. When you look at the price of milk and the price of eggs, and you look at his tariffs, the very people who supported him, his own people who are now having voters' remorse because they can't produce and sell their products. Farmers who are now being interviewed saying they've been duped and admittedly that they voted for President Trump, but say resoundingly that they would not vote for him again. This is just 3 weeks. He's right. 3 weeks into his term, and already the havoc is being spread throughout our country.
And it's just 3 weeks. But let's get to the budget. You and Speaker Mike Johnson both hail from Louisiana, where many of the Speaker's own constituents rely heavily on food aid and other social services that he and the administration, the Donald Trump administration, want to cut. Politico is reporting some Republicans in swing districts are nervous that these cuts may hurt their voters and ultimately cost them their seats. How do you see this budget battle playing out? And what would it take for Democrats to consider supporting a plan if Republicans cannot unify themselves?
I will tell you that my Republican colleagues all over the country, many of which I've had the opportunity to speak with, and in private they will say that they are concerned and they're worried, but in public they can't because they're afraid that this president will primary them. So, but in private, they get it. They understand that these sweeping suggested cuts are going to paralyze Americans. It's going to paralyze farmers. It's going to paralyze our research universities, Tulane University, LSU University. There's some $40 billion in drastic cuts to research that we are working feverishly to find a cure for cancer. This is impacting not just Democrats. If you want to look at waste, abuse, and fraud, we're all for that. This is not about waste, abuse, and fraud. These are unilateral cuts, layoffs, and deep cuts into areas that keep our country going. And they're obviously doing it without any knowledge of facts.
Now, on that point, the White House now is slashing government agencies with seemingly little regard for the law or maybe even national security. NBC News is reporting the administration is now trying to scrambling They're scrambling to try to rehire National Nuclear Security Administration workers it laid off last week. And they can't even figure out how to contact some of the people they let go. You sit on the Homeland Security Committee. What is your response to this recklessness?
It's demonstrative of giving the keys to the car for someone who can't drive. Giving the keys to the car to Elon Musk, who is an unelected individual, an unelected millionaire, billionaire, who now has his newest toy. This is a huge Etch-a-Sketch for him. Except when you screw this up, you can't simply shake the glass and make it go away. We're talking about people's lives. We're talking about businesses. We're talking about people's health. We're talking about the sanctity and the strength of our democracy. We're talking about our relationships on a world scale that are being damaged every day by this billionaire who's playing Monopoly with people's lives.
Now, Louisiana, let's go to your home state and the home state of the Speaker Johnson. Louisiana has received more direct aid from FEMA in the last decade than nearly every other state. Yet the president has called for FEMA's elimination, and Elon Musk is looking at big cuts to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which, of course, tracks hurricanes like those that regularly hit Louisiana. Trump says that states should be responsible for their own disaster management. Can Louisiana, one of the poorest states in the U.S., realistically do that if FEMA's abolished?
We cannot. We cannot, nor can any other state. If you're going to get rid of FEMA, then you have to replace it with a very similar program that will do the exact same thing that FEMA did. In Louisiana, we know we have storms that come, they stay longer, they come stronger, and they leave more havoc in their path. The thought that the people of Louisiana would not have the benefit of having FEMA to come in or some like organization to provide resources before, during, and after a storm is an irresponsible act by this president and by his co-president, Elon Musk, who clearly knows nothing about government. And I'd question how much he actually knows about business if he thinks that he can go in to any system, unilaterally remove employees, and not have a plan for someone to continue to do the functions of those people you've removed. You've got a national security at risk. You've got a health system at risk. You've got our farmers at risk. You've got research at risk. You've got our national security at risk.
Now, let me go to a piece you wrote last week, an opinion piece, pledging to respect and protect Louisiana's federal workers impacted by Trump's government purge, warning against his buyout plan and pressing Americans to reject his actions. But critics continue to question whether congressional Democrats are doing enough to counter the disinformation blitz of Trump 2.0. You sit on the House Democratic Steering and Policy Committee, helping to guide your caucus on its priorities. How do you respond to that criticism?
Well, listen, there's a lot of work to be done. And we are working feverishly to keep up with the barrage of lies and falsehoods and attempts to demise our democracy, to challenge the powers of Congress and to enlarge the powers of the presidency. Article 2 of the United States Constitution spells out the powers of the presidency, and as vast as they are, they do not impede the powers that Article 1 spells out for the Congress. Among many powers are the powers of the purse. This president is pushing the envelope on all of these congressional and constitutional powers. We won't let them. I understand that the American people are frustrated and afraid. Rest assured that this Democratic caucus is not going to sit back and let this president or Mr. Musk tear our democracy down, ruin or ignore our rule of law, ruin our relationships abroad or home. We're going to continue to fight and demonstrate, as we have. We've taken them to 5 different cases. We've won every time. We'll continue to push back legislatively, legally, and procedurally. We will not let them.
All right, I'm going to have to leave it there. Always good to